Hey guys, Nick Gabriel and Brian Rose from London Real here. And this week we had on the show Yannick Naud, who's a French political candidate. I don't know about you, but I learned a lot.
Yeah, he was. He's actually just running for office, so he hasn't been a politician before, and I think he's kind of coming at it from a new perspective, at least for now. He's running for the first office ever to represent French citizens overseas. And I thought he gave us the real deal.
Man, I was expecting it to be kind of boring because I don't really have a taste for politics, but I learned a lot. He's a very interesting guy.
Yeah, no, he has some interesting things to say. He talks about politics in general, internet voting, and all sorts of great stuff. So check it out.
Enjoy.
Bonjour and welcome to London Real. My name is Brian Rose. Joining me as usual is Mr. Nick Gabriel. And joining us in studio today is Monsieur Yannick Naud. No.
Hi.
And he's actually running for a historic office, which is a member of the French Parliament that's going to be representing all French citizens in Northern Europe.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yes.
And so it's the 10 countries in Northern Europe, right?
Exactly, yeah. All the Baltic country, Nordic country, UK and Ireland.
I'm jealous. You get to travel to Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania.
I didn't go yet, but I'm going to Copenhagen and to Malmo. It's a bit less sexy, but tomorrow.
Wow, tomorrow. Okay, that's very cool. I was thinking of the Ides of March. I don't know if you saw that movie.
I started watching it.
It's I just wanted to be his campaign manager. Maybe it might be good to see you behind the scenes. But before we get into what you're running for and who you're representing, because I know there's a large number of French citizens in London, but I just wanted to hit you with the general question I think of, and I think our viewers have kind of hit us with, and maybe even Nick feels this way. When we think of politicians, a lot of people come to think, why should I bother voting? I know I speak with a lot of people with the last election, when it was David Cameron, versus Gordon Brown and Nick Clegg, and a lot of people I know didn't bother voting. I just wondered what you would say to people that have a general malaise on one side about voting, and then on the other side we got people fighting for their lives in places like Libya and Syria and Egypt for the right to vote. Did you vote, Nick, in the general election?
I actually make a point of not voting ever for anything.
Okay, cool. We want to get into that too. Yeah. What do you say to that?
I think if you like someone, you have to be able to vote for the existing candidate. I think what is important is to recognize the white vote, which is in fact could be a protest vote. So you go vote, but you vote for no one. And in most of jurisdiction, most of country, a blank vote is a nil vote and doesn't count. I think it should be registered as a way to say that none of the candidates represent my view, and that will have an impact. Having said that, if you don't vote, you run the risk that the country will be managed by people that will make mistakes. And all in all, people fight for many years for democratic vote, and you need to by expressing your opinion, you contribute to the country. And if you don't vote, you have no right to complain, basically. But if you have voted, you can express your opinion.
What do you think about that?
You mentioned earlier that the inherent danger is people who would be running the country that might make mistakes.
Yes.
But do you not think that it's an inherent part of the human experience that in any job or any endeavor you're bound to make mistakes?
Yes, of course. But you need to, you try to get the best people to do the best job. Mm-hmm. However, you select those people could be different if it's a company or if it's a government. But the goal should be to put the best people in charge for the best job. It's one way to make sure that people running the country, it's a big budget, there's a lot of, it will have an impact on the life of a lot of people. You want to have the best person doing it.
Do you not think that best is a very subjective term? Your best candidate might be someone else's worst candidate.
Of course, that's why it's important to have a vote for people to express who is best for them. Mm-hmm. And the best, there's no best, absolute best. Everyone will have a slightly different opinion.
You're new to politics, and
yes.
It's funny because you're not like an insider. And when I watch a movie like The Ides of March, you look at all the dirty side of politics, and you look at these guys that maybe start off ideally, like Ryan Gosling's character. He believes in this guy, which is George Clooney. And then after a while, these politicians morph into just getting reelected, and it becomes almost like a business to them.
Yeah.
Now, you're new to this game. So how do you feel? Was part of you hesitant to get into this potentially dirty business of politics?
As you know, I was coming from capital market, so I used to trade and everything.
Finance.
And I was thinking, I was quite thick-skinned because, if you work in capital market, it's tough. It's tough every day. You have to, for your clients, you have to make money, everything. Right. In fact, I'm, as you said, I'm pretty new to politics, but what I saw so far, it's not shocking, but it's much more ruthless than what we experience in finance. It's much ruthless, and it's not like legal or not legal, what you can do, what you can't do, what is ethical or not. Like everything is
everything goes.
Everything goes.
There's an MMA fighter named Chris Lytle who just retired from the UFC, and he's running for Senate in Michigan. He said the same thing. He said it's just ruthless. There's no rules. There's rumors. There's lies, and you can't do anything about that. Can you bring that mic up just a little bit?
There's an expression: cool. If you play in the mud, you're going to get dirty. And did you ever watch it? I know you've watched that show, The Wire.
Yeah, I love it.
You know that guy he was running for mayor, right?
Yeah, he was running for mayor. Carcetti,
and he started out as this young idealist, and he really wanted to make a difference. Yeah. And in the end, the system broke him. And Yannick, you seem like a cool guy. I don't know you. I don't even know what your aspirations are, except for what I watched in your CNBC appearance. But if I were a betting man, I'd say that in 20 years' time, you, like all other politicians, will have been corrupted by the nature of the game. How would you answer that?
Well, there's one thing for sure. I'm not going into politics to make it money. I mean, there's no money to be made. I think doing local politics at the MP level.
Why are you doing it?
I'm doing it because in the last few years, I've been asked by a lot of media to comment on policy, and I've been doing it on TV, on radio, on the paper. And at one time, I was a bit tired, and I wanted to move from being an analyst and stop saying, they should do this, they should do that, that's wrong, and instead trying to be, to be an actor of the change. And there's not so many ways to do it except trying to do it yourself. And since there's it's a new seat, it's a new election, there's no incumbent candidate, I think it's the best place to start.
Can you talk a bit more about what's going on? Because I had never heard of this, but you're basically, it's a new, you said it's 11 new seats that have been created in Parliament to represent French citizens abroad.
Exactly. For the first time in France, on the 3rd and 17th of June, French people living abroad, all over the world, as long as they're registered in the electoral list, will be able to elect 11 MP for all over the world. So there's an MP for Northern Europe. That's the seat I try to win. There's MP for North America, Canada and States, and there's MP for East Europe, and and so on. And therefore, those MP will have exactly the same right like MP elected in domestic France. They will have to go to Paris to vote law and to suggest new laws. And the difference is the constituency is outside France.
Right. I love this concept. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, because I vote for a presidential election every day, and I send my vote off overseas, and it goes in the mail. And I mean, honestly, there's rumors that some of those votes don't even get counted. And I'm always like, okay, I'm one out of 200 million Americans voting, and does it really matter sometimes? But then also I think, okay, I've got someone representing me there, that potentially their job is to represent my interests, say, potentially overseas. And if not, I can re-elect someone else. So I don't have this option. Like, there's 435 members of Congress and like 102 members of Senate and a president. So I can elect president, but I can't represent someone in a parliamentary capacity to go out there and try to fight for my rights as an overseas citizen. I get dually taxed. I pay U.S. federal taxes, or the higher of UK of U.S. And part of me wishes that I'd have representation. Part of me also wonders if it would make a difference. Is that kind of where you're coming from?
It's my personal opinion that, especially in a place like the US, the government is bought and paid for by corporations. I mean,
well, what about a place like Egypt, where it is like the army runs the government, and people are like dying to try to get this democracy? Do you think they're misguided?
That's a very good question. I mean,
because they fight that these people are dying supposedly for this right for democracy, and then we in the West, a lot of us take it for granted. Is it better to have some representation or some accountability than none?
I mean, I guess, Brian, it's it's an imperfect system in an imperfect world. You know, democracy is probably like the least bad of a bad bunch.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably my view on the whole
Maybe
thing.
capitalism is the least bad of a way to set up a society to a certain extent.
Yeah, but there's one thing to be said. I mean, no system are better. I think, for example, Nordic countries, parliamentary democracy work very well. I think one thing in states which is odd compared to a lot of other countries, there's no cap in the amount of money you can spend on your campaign.
But this year too with the super PACs, you mean?
I mean, you can, the campaign. I mean, for example, in my campaign, I can spend €50,000, and it's capped. If I spend more than that, I'm out of the.
Even if you get individual donations, like in small amounts.
Yes.
Okay.
Even, So in states, in the presidential race, I mean, they're spending an enormous amount of money. So maybe, and because they spend so much money, they need to receive a lot of money from individuals or other people, and it makes them more susceptible to influence, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, Obama got elected. I think one of his big things in 2008 was getting lots of small amounts of money from a lot of people. And he used Facebook, and he did a really good job. Got lots of $100 donations from students and kids in the Change platform. And I mean, he got to Washington, and obviously he was the change guy, and he had a really hard time because I think he would show up at Washington, and there's this whole lobbying effort. There's this whole bureaucracy. I think you're right. Money corporations control a lot of these senators, and he had a hard time trying to enact change.
At least he's doing some. I mean, you know what? At the end of the day, I complain about politics and stuff, but I mean, there are. It's praxis, it's action. They're doing something,
right?
Which I respect and admire.
I guess the more transparent it gets. I mean, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. I mean, we had Watergate happening 50 years ago, where it was like a president was paying to spy on another party. I mean, maybe that happens today, but it was really blatant. So maybe we're getting a little better each year. I don't know.
You can only hope, right?
We had some comments on Facebook, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. Are we going to get to a point one day where, I mean, Joe Rogan, which is a guy who inspired our podcast, always says at some point the internet will decide because everyone will vote on issues, and maybe we won't elect someone like Yannick to go to France. Maybe we'll be able to vote on every law, just ourselves go on and click. And then some people say that could be hacked. But what do you think about that?
First of all, I mean, for the first time in France, this specific election, which is the 11 MP abroad, it will be the first time that it will be possible to vote by internet in France. It's different in every country, but the first time is the first test.
Wow.
They will do it for the first time.
They haven't done that in the States, I know.
And the way it will work, you will a bit like when you try to do a bank transfer. You will vote online, and they will send you a text on your phone, and you will put the code as a password or as a security thing. And by doing that, they think that the system will be safe enough for you to vote. Basically, they copy the system from online banking system.
Interesting.
So it's very difficult to know how many people will vote. Out of the, I can see in my constituency, 60% of people, they gave their email address.
Okay.
And therefore, 60% of people, they should be able, as long as they have a mobile, some of them don't have mobile, but I would say 50% of people should be able to vote by internet. That will be very interesting to know. In fact, they have this right to vote by internet. Yeah. What will be the percentage?
I think Brian's question, if I'm not mistaken, he's saying, what if we just bypass the whole concept or notion of representation, and every now and then the government just says, okay, we're thinking of changing this law, log on to this website and make your decision. I mean, do you foresee that in the future? Do you think that could ever happen? Because then guys like you would be out of a job.
Yeah. The point is, so right now when you elect someone, he has 5 years or 4 years in states to do what he thinks is necessary for the country to get better. Okay. And having 5 years leeway is more. It's probably more possible at the beginning to do the tough decision, maybe not popular decision, but that will be good for the country in the next few years' time. You can't, as a company, you can't manage a company looking at
a 5-year vision.
You need a quarter by quarter vision. You need to have a long-term vision. And if you were voting for every single law every Sunday, for example, First of all, I mean, at least the good thing, you will be less watching TV, you're probably doing something else. But, there will be a lot of short-term decision. And in fact, it will be worse than, a lot of time there's complaint that politicians, they're just looking at the poll, and depending if the poll are against or in favor of something, they will vote the same way just to stay popular. Mm-hmm. If you were in a system where people were voting constantly, you will have a lot of short-term decision. Okay. So I'm not sure it will be better. I think what is true is like sometimes you have to make a referendum, you have to ask people to vote on this very, very, very specific subject. Okay. And the internet will make it easier. Because instead of going on Sunday or here in UK during weekday and vote physically, it can be much quicker. Not a lot of people are living in the countryside, and it's not easy to move to vote. So if you want more people to vote, you have to give them the choice to vote online as well.
I think it's exciting that it's online is going to be possible. And I mean, you could argue that everything can be hacked, but at some point, voting machines can be hacked, and we know Russian elections are stuffed. I mean, they had a region in Chechnya that had 105% voter turnout, and they were people like, okay, what's going on here? And they were just, shipping people from station to station to vote, and I also think that, I mean, like Obama, he's in a position with all this knowledge that he has that we don't have, and he has a long-term perspective. And I think there's a point where if you go to poll people in Iceland or in Greece right now, they're like, no more austerity, no more this, we want this. And I think sometimes the public could probably think a bit too much short term at some point, right?
Yeah, I think I think like for every organization, it's good for people to take long-term decisions instead. And they might be right, they might be wrong, but they need to have enough time to take sometimes tough decision that will pay up in a few years' time. I mean, if we look at companies now, we realize that, for example, in Germany, a lot of companies are taking, they're not looking at quarter-to-quarter result, and therefore, now in 2012, they have much bigger market share than UK or a French or American company that are obsessed by the quarterly result.
That's an interesting or very smart friend of mine once said to me the reason that China's ascendance has been so rapid is because they aren't stifled by the short democratic cycle. They can plan in 50-year chunks.
China's an interesting place.
And I mean, I guess a lot of the world's most powerful and influential people, if you look at, we spoke about it on a previous show, like one of your friends, he was sending his kid to a school, and he had made that choice based on the friends that his kid would make at that school. So he'd grow up to have certain business partners and networking contacts. So I guess there's an argument for that. Right?
Communism, there was something in The Economist, and you've probably seen the ads The Economist does in the Tube, which is interesting. It'll say prostitution should be legal, and then next it'll say prostitution should be illegal. And it says, okay, it gives these women a place to work if they want to, and then illegal. It has arguments for and against. It had something on communism in China saying the West says it's not no one gets to vote. But on the other flip side, they manage a lot of long-term policy decisions for a country that if you had the people vote popularly, it could turn into, potentially civil war with all the economic differences. Mm-hmm. What do you think about
that? When you look at progress, I spent 6 years in Japan, and a lot of the growth in Japan were done where, in fact, when the regime was not very democratic. Whatever it was, it was occupied by states for a while after the war, right. Or after that, it was not really a democratic process. Same for South Korea for many years. Singapore is still not democratic. I think, obviously, what we have to achieve is a democratic state everywhere, because everyone should be able to change the country.
But that statement, everyone should be able to change the country. I mean, there are certain individuals, like, for example, one of the reasons I don't vote is because I don't have a very strong understanding of politics. Like, I don't think my vote should carry as much weight as someone like Brian, who sits and reads Stratfor, and he's educated, and I don't know that that's true. I mean, if you look at,
but it still affects you at the end of the day. I might have my own interests, you know what I mean?
I mean, look, the average, not the average guy, but a lot of people go and have McDonald's every day for lunch, right? And they make such a poor decision regarding their own nutrition.
Right.
Do I want like their decisions regarding I don't know, public policy? There
was a book written in the 1800s called The Tyranny of the Majority, I think, in the States, and I think it talks about what you're talking about.
Your point is, in some country like in Switzerland, you have to vote.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you not vote, I mean, they can fine you, and you have to. Everyone have to vote.
Wow.
I think it's a bit extreme, and if you don't want to vote, you should be allowed not to vote, obviously. And I think you have to allow the protest vote, which is you go to the polling station and you say, all those guys, I don't like all those guys. I will have a blank vote, just for you to show that no one represents you. I think both are necessary.
Okay.
Do you think a blank vote would just show people of the kind of disinterest or malaise that's out there?
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of research. A lot of research have been done on that. I mean, so far it's disregarded. I think if you were showing on the election day that this person got a certain percentage, this person got a certain percentage, and in fact the blank vote is a very higher percentage than any other candidate, that will mean something. That will mean that the existing candidates are not really representing the voice of the population. After that, there is some politicians want to go a step further and put in the law something saying that if the blank vote is above a certain percentage, then you have to redo the vote or something like this. It's probably a bit extreme, but I think the first step would be to recognize the blank vote.
Would you vote blank?
If I was forced to.
But otherwise, it's kind of the whole point. Why would I bother? So why would I bother to vote blank kind of thing?
Let me ask you a question, Brian.
Please.
Knowing what you know from The Wire, and
did you see The Wire, by the way? You
No.
familiar with it? Okay. There was some politician that was he was elected in Denmark, I think, that said part of his treaties was everyone in the country should watch The Wire.
Interesting.
That was part of his
That
political
is very
party.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyways, go ahead. It was a five-season series in the States.
I know, but
you know about it.
I didn't see all of it.
Great show, by the way. If you
It's
haven't
kind
watched it, watch
Baltimore police versus the criminal factor versus some politicians in there and stuff. But what was your question, dude?
So, understanding what you do about politics and the nature of it, and the fact that invariably a large proportion of people involved in it turn out to be, as you said, ruthless or corrupt or...
Is that different than any other industry? That's what I wonder.
I don't know. Is it?
I mean, we see price fixing that Apple did with their ebooks recently, and we see, the oil spill in the Gulf, and I just wondered if it's different.
I don't know if it is. I don't know. But my question to you was, and I want an honest answer, and it's I guess it's going to be tainted by the fact that Yannick is sitting right here.
Why?
Why shouldn't?
Do you think that an honest man can make it in politics?
Interesting question. An honest man. Okay, I guess that's pretty
a man who
general.
refuses to backstab and refuses to play that game of subterfuge. And
I will answer this question on June the 4th.
What, with the vote?
And I have another question lined up for you.
Is that after you're elected? You mean?
No, it's the first round. The second round is 17. So I will have an idea on the 4th, and maybe on the 18th I tell you exactly the answer.
I mean, I guess first I'd say, what is honest? One man's politics is another man's backstabbing. I mean, you're in your own business. I mean, you run things all the time. Would people say some of your decisions are cutthroat or backstabbing at some point?
I learned...
Or compromise?
I learned the hard way. I'm reading a book at the moment, right, called The Count of Monte Cristo.
Fantastic book.
Fantastic book. And I watched this program once, and the guy was
French author.
Yeah, Alexander Dumas, right?
Yeah.
I watched the program once, and the guy was using Count of Monte Cristo as a text. And he was showing how the protagonist, Dante, at the start of his life, before he was imprisoned unjustly, he was a good and honest man. But the problem was he hadn't had enough experience with the dark side, with the shadow aspect of human nature. And that's what allowed him to get totally rolled the way he was. And I
don't know about many good and honest men.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if I'm just thinking of politics or business or anything, can you go through and be completely honest the whole your life? I don't know what that means. I mean, like in business, if I want to like shut down a competitor and be ruthless and underprice him and hire all his staff legally, some people would say that was ruthless and wrong and mean.
But that's
capitalism, isn't it, to a certain extent?
Well, to a stone cold killer, that's capitalism.
Maybe that's true.
But where do you draw the line? Like where I guess it's the age old question. Okay, so lying on a spreadsheet or maybe stealing a customer from someone's one thing, but where is the line drawn? Like, what stops you from fucking poisoning the guy at a dinner? Like,
whether you get caught.
You know what I mean?
But I mean, I think everyone in their everyday lives compromises themselves all the time. Mm-hmm. It's funny when I had a buddy that worked at Deutsche Bank in the city, and his friends were calling him a greedy banker like a year ago, 2 years. And he said he stopped at one point. He's like, I don't think greed is monopolized by bankers. He's like,
I
there's
don't think
greed,
so either.
there's greed everywhere, and there's people cutting corners all the time to get the job done. And anyone in any job they do probably sees points where they can maximize or minimize. But I guess politics. Why are we so, or why are you so not happy with politics? Is it because we've seen so many examples, so many public examples of people being corrupted?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And another part of it is, I read something a long time ago that shaped a lot of my opinion, and that is, governments or political systems usually start out quite small. Like within a tribe, there's a group of elders, and then as the civilization and society grows, so does the political system. And what happens is it becomes bloated and it becomes greedy because it requires a lot of resources to support it. It's a paradoxical thing. Capitalism, it's pretty much anti-capitalist to me. That's why I'm quite surprised that someone like you doesn't have complete disdain for politics, because to me it's the complete opposite of the efficiency of capitalism.
I just think a democratic system, and you can tell me if you think you're wrong, I think right now it's the best option. And I figure I need to engage and play the game than just to ignore it, because if I ignore it, I'm almost committing a crime that's 10 times as worse.
That's a good point.
So I can at least, especially look at the Green Party and look at Nick Clegg and all that coalition government. Okay, they're not doing a great job, but new people have a voice.
Yeah.
So
I think in every human endeavor, it's a compromise and things like this. I think the main point about politics, which there's a lot of work to be done in a lot of countries, which already be done in Nordic countries. You have to make it as transparent as possible. I mean, if you in Denmark, for example, you can see every decision, every parliamentary decision are recorded. Every text can be online very quickly. And if it's, obviously there can be excess and everything. But if the transparency is greater, it should improve the system. I give you another example. In Norway, I don't think it will be done in France or in UK or in US anytime soon. In Norway, you have an iPhone app to be able to check the tax, the tax paid by anyone you want in Norway.
Really?
So
that's amazing.
If you go to a bar and there's a guy chatting a girl, she will go to the toilet, check your iPhone, and check how much the guy was making last year, and depending on the results, she will chat the guy.
That is incredible.
Interesting. Yeah. I think transparency is the way. Also, if you limit the public campaign amounts involved, and if you make every decision, like you said, public. All the congressional decisions are public, and if the more you make it transparent, even if you go down to the expenses they're claiming and see, okay, how much are they claiming for their flights and their private jets if they're doing that? I think that can only make it better.
Exactly. I think that's one. What you mentioned there is one of the things that's just really left a bad taste in my mouth. I don't read newspapers anymore, but when I did, I'd invariably see, every time I picked up a newspaper, story about some politician spending this huge amount on flights for him and his wife to go shopping, and I don't know, I guess it's misguided idealism, Brian.
It's their job also to report the bad news. But yeah, and they're getting weeded out, all those MP expenses and stuff, and that's probably not going to happen in the future. But
the system has, reading Count of Monte Cristo, it's just opened my eyes to, I guess the system has improved so much because the amount of evil in that, what was happening like with the revolution and everything in French politics at the time, it blew my mind.
It was an old boys club in that book, right? And everyone just was conspiring and things.
I have one question for you, Yannick. I don't know you, but based on first appearances and this first impression that I have of you, you seem like someone who has a good and honest and open face, right? I would like to ask you, have you got any internal mental checks and balances that you're going to use to make sure that you don't become corrupted by the system?
Well, I have to express my judgment on everything I do, and basically people, the process of election, you have to trust someone's judgment for the next 5 years to make the right decision. Like I say, I'm not going into politics in order to have more power or to the idea is to really influence the way the money is spent in France and the way the government is run to make it better. That's my only motive. There's not a big plan to gain anything from it. Not really.
Do you see problems in France that you're like, I wish that could change this?
Yes, especially it's less on the ideology. It's mostly on the economic. The economic policy is in France is in a total disarray.
It seems like a big old bureaucracy
Yes,
that's not
I mean,
moving in the right ways with subsidies for people growing grapes. They shouldn't be doing it. And maybe I'm generalizing, but
No, but I mean, there's a lot. I mean, a lot of country. I mean, we're living in UK. I mean, a lot of country have a pragmatic government policy, and in France, a lot of things seems to be governed by ideology and other thing. And there's a lot. I mean, even without big idea or there's a lot of things to do today to make the running of the government smoother and cheaper and better.
Just simplify things.
It's not going to save the world, but at least if you can save if you're going to save some debt of the government, that will be good for everyone.
I had a question that you've pretty much answered already, but I'd be interested to hear your opinion on it. When you're a kid, all the boys in the neighborhood, like this one wants to grow up to be a fireman, this one wants to grow up to be a policeman or a doctor, whatever. I mean, how often do you hear little kids saying, "I want to grow up to be a mayor or a politician"?
I was a senator one time for Halloween.
Seriously?
I was, yeah. Okay. But it's refreshing to hear someone that has like something they want that's bigger than the greater good, or like, okay, I think I can change this, knowing that you're going to be going uphill. I mean, you're going to be one of 537 people in a parliament, which is
so it's going to be far from easy, yeah.
Far from easy. And you're going to, I was wondering, okay, it's day one where you go into Paris and you walk into the parliament and you got this crazy interconnected social, political group of people, and you're trying to be I'm the change guy, and they've met you every year for the last 200 years, and they've got all these social ties, economic ties, old boys ties, and you're going to be trying to like knock at the door. The good thing you've got is that you represent potentially an economically influenced group, being French citizens in London. But what's that first day going to be like?
Well, I don't mind to be the underdog. I mean, I've been the underdog in my whole career. I've been working for smaller company and everything. Now I work in a small fund. I don't mind. I mean, even if it's difficult, it's worth it. Okay. So it's all I can do. I will try my best to try to change things. I will probably make mistakes. There's a lot of things there's probably a lot of things to learn. But I can learn quickly. You know
what? I wish hearing you say that. What you say sounds really altruistic and pretty good. But that's a politician's job, right? And what politicians?
You're so cynical, dude. I've never seen you this close-minded about something.
But what I'd love is like if we had like an X-ray machine that could X-ray your soul, and we could just see straight away is he
Can we
ready?
Point it on you too?
Yeah, for sure. But you find some bad stuff.
It's a good idea because you have pretty good equipment here. You should put a lie detector as well. I mean, I'm sure you can buy on eBay. I'm sure it doesn't cost a lot. You put a lie detector and you can see on the graph if the guy is lying or not.
Imagine having every candidate do a polygraph test.
That would be great.
Incredible.
Yeah,
you would be surprised.
He would pass now, but if we did the whole parliament like at once, and saw what they were like, or in 5 years' time,
it would be. Well, they were all lying, but which one was lying the most?
Well, I'm curious. Say we take ourselves forward 5 years, and you're actually running for re-election.
Yeah.
What's that Yannick Naud going to be like in all honesty?
It's probably gonna no more hair, or everything gonna be white, wrinkled. I mean, it's
you
funny.
Look at pictures of Obama, man. He's aged so fast.
Seriously.
Oh yeah,
It's
didn't
incredible.
Have the gray and
it's not only Obama. Every politician. I mean, Tony Blair, for example. I mean, he did some very bad thing in his when he was prime minister.
That's
but
good things.
He aged a lot, and it looks like. I mean, you would think that you have a good life, you have private jet or whatever, you have dinner with the head of state, but it looks like it's very stressful because when you look at president before and after, it's not an advertising for a health clinic or whatever. It's really people.
So just constant pressure and stress.
Constant. And like when you're a chief executive, you've got everything riding on you. I mean, like you look at Obama, he's giving it was like a presentation dinner of the White Horse Correspondence Crew, and he's making jokes when he just pushed the order on Osama, and he's sending 70 Navy SEALs over that potentially die, and he's cracking jokes at the same time. I mean, that's a lot on your mind. I mean, as an MP, you probably don't have that many crucial decisions, but it's 24/7.
Yeah, you have media. I mean,
media too.
You have media attention, and you have to be like I say, everything have to be completely open to everyone. So obviously, it should be pretty difficult.
The Onion. Do you watch the Onion or read the Onion?
You read it every
now. It's like a humor publication in the States. There's a website, you might have seen it, and it had one joke, and it was like Obama is. He's trying to convince the Americans why he would bother running again. It's like, because he's like, why would I want all this bullshit on me that you put on me? Because it's always his fault, and nothing works out right. I mean, it's a bit of a thankless job too, right?
Totally.
It's a weird combination of ego and power and public service that I agree. It has so many weird feelings. Do you have feelings about it?
Look, personally, if you said, oh, you're not sure if any industry is untainted by the dark side or the shadow, and I'm inclined to agree with you.
No,
but
it's not.
politics is just, I mean, when you hear about a corrupt politician, you don't even bat an eyelid. You know, it's so the nature of the game. And as an outsider looking in, I always the thing that runs through my mind is, why would I just want to get involved in that? Why would I want to just, you know? And Yannick, you seem like
To
a cool
change
guy.
it. If you want to change it, that's the only way to do. I mean, you can vote. You have one vote. At least if I get elected, I will have one vote, not out of 40 million. I will have one vote out of 577. As Brian said, it's still it's still going to be difficult to change things, but at least you're getting there.
I mean, you look at the nuclear disaster that was in Japan recently. Okay, this horrible thing happened in a country where you think is one of the safest places in the world, and it was a lot because of really bad bureaucracy. And now you see what Germany did. They're shutting down all of their nuclear plants. So like the Green Party is really powerful in Germany, and there's a big youth vote, and they're basically voting with their votes, and they're shutting down nuclear power when Germany really can't afford to be dependent on Russian oil, but they're doing it, right? And you look at the Liberal Democrats, Nick Clegg, I mean, he's part of a coalition government. I mean, it's hard to believe that happened. So these votes can make a difference, no?
I'm sure, yeah.
But it's important to address what Nick's feeling, because like there's a lot of people like you, and there are people who are like, why should I bother voting, you know? And it's usually younger people, you know? Actually, maybe it's older people too.
I think I mean, I don't have any statistic. I think obviously people have to see that they will, what they do have an impact. And in the past, it's true that either because people were having, I mean, some people make promises and don't fulfill those promises afterwards. It's normal for some people to feel they're not interested. But you know, at one point, the way the country is run will affect your life, and therefore you should be involved.
How are you finding this political race? I know you said you have kind of you're more of the moderate candidate. You've kind of got to just generalize, the Tory kind of candidate,
yes.
the more right side, and then the liberal, what would I call it? The Labour side,
exactly,
the more left side. You're more in the middle.
Yes.
How do you start a campaign? How do you do this? What's the fight like? You said a little. It was not as clean as you thought it might be.
I mean, it's at the beginning. It's first of all, it's a local election, so there's local things to be solved for French people living in the constituency. It's mainly about education, taxation, and the right of double nationality. You know, so it's not big ideological debate about what should we do or not. It's like, you know, everyday concern that French people can have, you know, in terms of taxation. You know, you have a double taxation in some part of you pay some tax in France as well as tax here in UK or in some other country. In France, because there's quite a lot of pressure from the extreme right, the right to have a double nationality start to be in jeopardy. It's harder and harder to keep double nationality. I mean, some countries don't recognize double nationality traditionally, and why not? But in France, we've been doing it for many, many years, and it's something that makes the country better.
It's a tricky topic. Do you have dual nationality?
Mm-hmm.
You're South African and Greek, right? Mm-hmm. I have dual nationality as UK and US. And are you?
Oh, I'm French. My wife is Japanese, and in Japan, because it's an island, because it's a kingdom, and because of the tradition, they don't have the right to have double nationality.
A lot of countries don't allow it. If you think about a dual nationality, the whole concept of it is quite confusing, because if you ever did have to choose one nation or the other, it's tricky. I think you should have an economic right not to pay taxes in two countries, but like, you know, for you, what would you choose? Or if I had to choose?
You shouldn't have to choose. I mean, you can have two nationality, and you will feel close to, it's. You can drink tea and you can drink coffee.
What if you get drafted by both?
Yeah, I mean, if we take, the ideal that I have in my mind is as the planet is, I personally feel that we're moving towards a new type of consciousness. You know, we started it when we began to evolve. We formed these little tribes, and it was my tribe against your tribe, and then we moved to my village against your village, and now we're my country against your country. And I think eventually, I mean, we can hope maybe in a few hundred years, all of that will, like, borders.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Everything will just dissolve. And look, just think about it. It is quite arbitrary, the fact that I need a little book with a number that's got a little chip in it that's stored on a computer somewhere for me to cross some line. I mean,
is in peacetime too, though.
How do you mean?
If this was World War II, it wouldn't be so arbitrary. But yeah, I agree. It was peacetime. And you look at this Coney 2012, you saw that whole media thing about.
Crazy.
That's like, I mean, that was like a global movement. And you can say there were some bad things behind it. But 100 million people watched this video. And like, it just spanned across nationalities. It didn't matter like who you were a citizen of.
I mean, don't you find, like, as someone like you personally, like, something that I've noticed in myself lately is I identify less and less with, oh, I'm Greek or I'm South African or I'm just a fucking human being, bro.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like, I don't know. That's where I'm at this point. And politics kind of me seems the antithesis of that. Do you know what I mean?
I guess that's true. I guess then the other point is you want someone to represent your interests.
Yeah, but anyway, you have representation at a European level now. So in a way, at least you have a European area where at least within Schengen, people can cross border without showing any passport,
Right.
and you can vote for a European election. And all in all, I think there's a benefit to have a wider, let's say, states where you can move without having to show your passport or your ID card and all the things.
Yeah,
I remember when I
we're
was
both representing from these political changes that were made. I mean, you couldn't live and work in the UK unless you were a
Yes.
Greek
Yeah,
citizen, and I
that's true.
couldn't live and work here unless I became a UK citizen. So these were all changes that were made by political groups.
Exactly. I remember when I was a kid, like, because I was a Christian, quite a staunch Christian at the time, like a fundamentalist Christian, and the whole thing in that religion was like, this new world order is coming, and that's going to herald the end of the world. You know, this one world government and this one world religion, and I mean that was taught to me that this was the worst thing possible. And the more I think about it now, like, I just think that that's an amazing thing. That would be the best thing possible. Just dissolve all borders and complete transparency. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if it'll ever happen.
It's fascinating with the way the internet comes, and I think that's maybe ideal. But I think when there's going to be big global conflict, then it'll switch back down to clans. I mean, France
think it'll
invented.
revert?
I do, yeah. I mean, France invented the concept of democracy and nationalism, didn't it? It all opened in
With the revolution in the
in the 16 and 1700s, because before that it was a bunch of different clans, like you said, and they were all united, and that kind of gave France its all power and Napoleon, and became a nation, and people were now willing to die for a nation and not for their group, and that's only something in the last 200 years, right? 300 years.
Right. Democracy is quite young, and and that's for sure. But you know, there's one thing good about. I mean, we talked about capitalism and corruption and politician, but I think as long as people are able to trade with each other, and there is, they exchange goods and services. Usually, it's better for peace, and there's less war. If you have two countries doing a lot of trade, and therefore a lot of people benefiting from the fact that the frontier is open, the likelihood of a war is much lower.
Yeah, trade makes a big difference, doesn't it? And then I guess the European Union.
And the war is getting more and more global. The trade is becoming, every goods used to ship through, from China to Europe to South America. Now everything go in every direction, whatever it's, money or natural resources or
human capital even.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a big one. I'm going to hit it with a couple questions from our people on Facebook. I wanted to know, what's your day-to-day life on a campaign trail? I mean, are you kissing babies?
No.
Like, what do you have to do? Because you have to press the flesh, though, right?
I did some canvassing. I do some canvassing quite often. So I do door to door.
Okay.
Or we did a lot of things like that. We did some funny thing. We went to a French event, like concert or festival, to give some flyers. We do door to door because we have we have the list of where people live, so we can give some flyers and meet some people. I even went outside the building of French banks because it's full of French people,
Right.
as you know, to give to talk to them and everything.
Because you have a tricky job. You have to really target the French people, right?
Yes, it's
Which
very
is what?
tricky
Very
because
small percentage of the population. Here.
exactly, it's a very small percentage of the entire population, and within those French people, even less people are registered voter here. So it's very, very difficult to be able to target the people you want to convince.
Sounds like Facebook needs to get a nice little niche there so they can charge you money on ads. We've had a few questions. I think we covered a few of them, which were the whole internet side and the whole maximizing that. We had someone ask, it was Rosanna Freza. She's always got a question and comment for us. But and this is a good question potentially for you because you were in the industry. But she said, I don't expect Yannick to give a straight answer to this as he is a politician. Of course, he's not yet. But this is probably the toughest show you've been on. But to what degree is white-collar crime responsible for the European debt crisis? The Euro IMF bailout will ultimately just cause more misery to the taxpayer to repay their country's debt. How can we end this cycle?
A good question.
I'm just quickly curious what your call is, because you were in it and then you're not in it now, but I'm curious.
My opinion is worth any opinions. I mean, everyone can see it a different way. I think there were two main problems. First of all, there were a problem starting from state, but not only in states, which is the fact that people were lending money to people in order to buy a house, and they knew it from day one that they would not be able to repay. And just because they were repackaging it and selling it to people so far away, so far remoted from the entire process, they were able to do it for vast amount of money. So in this process, there was some kind of corruption because
this is in the U.S., really.
Yeah, the person originating the first loan, he knew that the person would not repay, but he didn't care because he was selling it right away.
This is more dishonest people.
The bank that was repackaging it, they didn't care either because they were repackaging and selling it somewhere. The rating agency, they were getting fees to rate something, and so therefore it was not a corruption. It was an incentive for people not to do the perfect job and not to, and therefore, I mean,
and it was making money for everyone, and why change it? Right?
And it's very difficult. I mean, I was working in a bank at the time. I was in different desk. And we had to do a certain budget, and we had the people in the CDOs and people doing structured credit. They were making hundreds of millions of euro of profit when I was barely making a few millions of profit.
You're like, how are those guys doing it?
And it's you can't run against that. It's what I call passive corruption. That's the problem you have in capitalistic societies. It's the capitalism will try, if there's no border and if there's no regulation. And the second point was why all this problem happened. It's because at that time politicians were thinking that the industry could self-regulate, and that was a big mistake. Because the job of the government is to regulate the industry, whatever it's the electricity supplier, whatever it's your water supplier, whatever it's the airline or banking. It's exactly the same thing. It's utilities. You have to regulate to make sure that there's no excess.
I like that concept of passive corruption. I guess it's something we probably all engage in without thinking about it, right?
I think you have to
just if something's going well in a capitalist society, your bills are being paid. It's just like everything's fine today.
Yeah, it's easy to stand on a high horse like I do sometimes and be like, oh, politicians are corrupt or bankers are corrupt. But I mean, you're sitting there doing the job. You got a wife and kids. Your wife wants a new Mercedes. Like the kids are in private schools.
I mean, you might have taken out a loan for a subprime loan in the States for a house you couldn't afford. You might have.
Yeah.
I might have. If that's what you were given credit by these people, right? And these banks were like, "Here's credit."
And so that's what we had in States. And in Europe, we had something slightly different. It's in fact the debt was not built and on the family level or individual level. All the debt were either in banks or in the States. In fact, if you look at the last 5 years in France, but it's the same in UK and the same in a lot of countries, the amount of debt that those countries took on just to subsidize some of the social costs, because it was impossible to keep up, and therefore. It's very difficult to know if it's white-collar corruption or not. But there were this incentive. There were such an amount of money in the system that it was incentive for everyone to push away the problem and think that growth will solve future problem. And there's one thing which is certain is when there's debt, you have to pay it back.
What about now? If you're a Greek citizen and they're like, I can't take any more austerity measures. This is ridiculous. This has got to stop. We want to get out of the euro. Or you see lots of countries now that are just like had enough of this potential austerity. What do you tell these voters?
No, the problem is the problem. It's people. I mean, the austerity measure today are not impacting people that benefited from it.
Right.
People that benefit from a lot of people benefit from it for a small amount of money or very large amount of money. But those people either they left the country or they went bust or whatever. So the problem is the pain is now distributed to people that in fact didn't really benefit from it, and that's really hard to really hard on them. And there's no perfect recipe. All in all. At least in Greece, people that lend money to the government lost money, and they lost quite a lot of money. They lost more than 75% of what they lend, and this amount of money doesn't have to be repaid. Slowly, there's a possibility that the country will be able to go back to go back. But it's the responsibility of the citizens are voting to make sure that the politicians make the right decision and therefore don't increase the amount of debt of the country. If they had voted for people a bit more responsible, the country will not have this kind of debt problem.
Yeah, but again, it comes back to at the point where they made those votes that put those people in power, they were using their combined or individual intellect to make the choices that they thought were the best at the time, and it clearly didn't turn out that way. Do you know what I mean?
It was the end of the bull market.
So. Yeah. So
no, but you have countries. I mean, if you look at Europe, continental Europe, to make it simple. Since the end of the 90s, some country took the right decision, whatever it's in Sweden. Most, I would say, country I know well, it's Sweden and Germany, for example, and they did reduce debt and they did make the country more competitive. And on the other side, and at that time, it was not the popular things to do because at that time, the Ireland economy was growing very quickly. Same for Spain, that it was a long-term decision to reduce deficit, and it was the right decision. So it's and they were both elected from normal people, and some politicians took the right decision. After that, it's very difficult to know how people will do. There's one thing for sure. I think you have to trust politicians is when usually when the situation is becoming very, very bad, they tend to do the right thing at the end. But I would say that the only criticism I would have about political system is usually a politician try to push the problem forward until it's untenable and he has to do something.
So it's the end of the 5 to 8 year democratic cycle, right?
4 year, to 8 year, yeah. Hey, I had a quick question, which I'm sure people will think about a lot. When you think of France, I think of one guy in particular besides Sarkozy, and that's Dominique Strauss-Kahn.
Yes.
And most people know about him. He was formerly the head of the IMF.
Yep.
And then he lost that position after his issues in New York, and now he's up for corruption issues again. And some people look at him and they're like, okay, this is what's wrong with French politics, although he isn't really in politics, is he? What's your read on him?
Well, in France, we were talking about transparency. And in France, it's true that there's much less media pressure on your personal life that you have here in UK.
They almost respect that, right? They honestly don't go into the personal life.
I don't know where it's coming from, whether it's traditional things or if it's the way the media, who own the media and everything. But so far, it's true that they were the kind of respect about, but on the other side of it, it's, a French politician will not show, they will not try to be elected by showing his kids and his wife and how perfect family they are.
Okay.
So it's a bit of both.
Is that a dig on the U.S. there? So it's a fine line there.
I don't know. I think there is definitely in France, and it's true everywhere, but definitely in France, there is a need for better transparency on either how you spend the money, how you look at the money, and the way you run your life. Here there's a debate in UK about people should show their tax expense. They should show their expense and the tax receipt. How much tax they pay and everything. And I think it's probably
for politicians.
Thing. Yes.
Yeah,
I think it's probably a good thing.
What do you think of Strauss-Kahn?
I don't even know who that is.
So he's the guy that was caught in New York for sexual harassment that at Hotel Maid.
Yeah.
Then those charges got dropped. Now he's back in France, and he's kind of accused of a roundabout of being kind of in some type of, it wasn't a prostitution ring, but it was like he was involved with some prostitutes in Lille and stuff. And it's just put this weird taint on him and everything that he is, although he isn't really directly involved in politics, is he, per se?
Not anymore, I think.
Not anymore. But it's just kind of this whole French cultural way of, like you said, they kind of leave the politicians' private lives to themselves. And if that works for France, then I guess that works for France, right? Yeah. And what about Sarkozy? Will he get elected? Nick likes his wife.
Okay. I don't know. So far in the poll, he's not winning. I think the poll is 54-46 for second round, so it's not obvious for him. But French people have the tendency of taking the decision at the very, very, very last time. And therefore, it's even though the first round is on the 22nd, so it's pretty soon. A lot of things can happen. Okay. I think if you in the poll, something like 35% of people didn't make up their mind yet.
Okay. We're almost done here, guys. I just wondered what your next 2 months is going to be like. You've got a vote on June 3rd?
Yes.
Is that to
The first round to be able to have only 2 candidates.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have another election.
Yeah, on 17th.
17th.
Yeah.
And that's going to be online or potentially online?
Yeah. People will have the choice to vote either online. They had the choice to vote by mail, online, and
I think that's so cool.
And going to to do it physically.
So you're going to be out there trying to press the flesh, getting yourself in person, talking, debating, that kind of thing.
Well, it's what I'm doing now. I mean, we're talking now. This afternoon, I have a big debate with French finance minister. There will be 150 people.
How do you prepare for that? And do you get nervous?
No, it's fine.
You don't seem like that.
And tomorrow morning, I take the first EasyJet flight to go to Copenhagen and Malmo, and I meet some people over there. There's some big event on renewable.
Yannick, don't lie to us. You're going on a Learjet, not EasyJet.
No, EasyJet. I tell you.
Probably everything's transparent these days. You don't want to get caught with a picture.
I mean, I tell you, EasyJet and Norwegian. I don't know if you know Norwegian. It's a fantastic low-cost company, and it's the one I'm using the most. Probably I'm one of the best clients now because I use them a lot. So it's all budget.
You probably have your picture at the budget seat. That's probably like a good campaign thing.
Yeah, those are the people that Brian spits on as he's walking through economy to the first class.
Carry my luggage.
Cabin, right?
Are you having fun? It sounds like fun.
I think it's very interesting. I meet a lot of people. People ask me questions. I need to be able to answer. So I think it's very interesting.
Sounds like a nice change.
One last question. The people, from me at least, the people that you meet, and I want, please, the honest as a politician can answer.
Not a politician,
The people, on average, the people that you meet in this new industry that you've entered into, are they the kind of people you'd like to have as friends outside of work?
Okay. But are you talking about people in the same party or people from the outside party?
Well, just like when you go meet these 150 cabinet ministers, et cetera, like that kind of...
I think the entire political class will benefit from the input from the private industry, because a lot. I mean, it's a bit sometimes a bit archaic, and there's a lot to improve. I mean, anyway, I'm here for that. There's a lot to improve in the way you run.
They don't run it like a business.
Yes, I think. I mean, whatever it's like. Your question was more about if I like people or not, but the way to run it could be. There's a much more efficient way to run it.
And you said something. You said that reminded me of what we're doing with London Real. Is that you told me earlier you've done the finance thing, and if anything, you were getting a little bored with it, and this is completely different, right? Because you're
I think come on, it's a fantastic challenge. So I mean, I'm up for it, and it's going to be very difficult for a lot of reasons. But it's not very different from. I don't think why it shouldn't be possible. At the end, everyone have to start. Every politician started in a local election at one time.
Yeah, I was thinking all that.
You have to start, and that's it. And you'll see you fail or you succeed, and or you get elected but you fail because what you try to achieve it's impossible or it's very hard. But you have to try. It's by trying that you change things. If you never try, you never change things.
Fair enough. Well, if you're French and you want to register to vote, then register. If they want to get in contact with you, your Twitter is @Yannick Naud. We've tweeted you out. That's YANNICKNAUD. Sorry, no. How else can they get in touch with you? Facebook, or what's the best way?
No, but you can. Now you go to you do Yannick Naud, YANNICKNAUD, and you will have the Facebook. You will have my website. You will have Twitter. We'll have
transparency, right?
You will have everything. And
if you're French, you should register to vote, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're French, you have to be already, you had to register back last year. But if you are registered, you probably know, you probably received an email from me. So therefore, either it went to your spam account, probably if you're a Gmail account, it probably went to spam. But otherwise, you received it, and you have all my detail.
Okay, cool.
Man, Yannick, if I was a French expat, I would vote for you.
Wow,
Thank you.
That's
You have my endorsement.
Well, thanks for coming on and answering the tough questions. I think
Respect to you.
Yeah,
Big respect.
That was big. So, our first politician, our first guy in a suit and tie. So that's awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for running the gauntlet, especially with Mr. Nick Gabriel.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
It's about the journey.
All right, peace, boys.
Cheers.